don't speak Cantonese, and just kind of, I feel like that's kind of bad, bad thing to do, but I'll admit I'll do it occasionally. So I feel like he was doing the same thing. He's like, oh, sorry, I don't speak English. And I'm like, oh, good, then I speak Cantonese. And I said it in Cantonese, like, okay, so I was like, and then everyone's like, whoa. And he's like, oh, no. And I was like, wow, that's like really rude, I feel like it's more of an excuse because, one of my teammates, his English is probably about the same level as most of the people who say their English isn't good. And we'll still interact mostly in English because, well, his English is better than my Cantonese. And then also, it's just it seems like an excuse people use, and they say, oh, maybe they're not confident in their English. And I'm like, I'm one of the only 4 native English speakers at this university. There's 1 from UK and 3 from America. Oh no, sorry, 2 from UK now, and 3 from America that I'm aware of. So everyone else here, even other Westerners, are second language learners. So they need to to get over this idea that, I don't know, they need to have perfect English to talk to me. And I don't think they actually believe that their English needs to be perfect. I think they're just using this excuse to not interact with us. And then also, like I said, I'm down for learning Cantonese. I would love to be in more Cantonese immersive situations. I saw this year all of the Cheongchi dorms except mine had Dabinlo. I would love to go. I love Dabinlo. So I saw them all set up outside, and I was like, wow, when's ours? And they're like, we're not having one. I was like, great. But we did have Tongyu last night. It was pretty good. But the only people I talked to were exchange students because they were from America. And they were the only ones that were out there at midnight, so. I did talk to 2 locals, but again, we only spoke in English because generally if I'm around and there's a small number of locals, they'll speak to me in English. So the situations I'm looking for are very gonna be very hard to come by. Where there's far more locals than non-locals. So if there's maybe 2 or 3 non-locals and the rest locals, but the locals will include us in the conversation. That's the problem. Because usually, if on the fencing team, they're all locals. I'm the only non-local on the fencing team. So either they're all talking in Cantonese, I'm just sitting to the side, trying to figure out what's going on, or 1 or 2 of them are talking to me in English. And so I'm not able to learn these kind of slang words. The only things I learned on the fencing team were Fagim, Poigim, and Zonggim. Because I knew them in Mandarin, and then I heard somebody say that in Cantonese, and so I was like, okay, yeah, those are the 3 kind of swords we have. So maybe English isn't as big a deal as they make it, but additionally, that said, even though CU is the Chinese university and it's the only one that offers Chinese classes, it doesn't require Chinese. So for me, this isn't as much of an issue because I believe, I need to integrate, I need to learn better Cantonese, I need to learn I already know Mandarin, I need to learn better Cantonese and interact with the locals, assuming they will allow me to, which is another issue. I think, it needs to come from both sides. We need to learn, we need to put this effort in, but they need to allow us in so we can learn. But there are other students who don't hold this view, and there's no, rule stating that they need to know Chinese to be here. The only requirement to get into university is to know English. So on their side, where I personally believe they need to learn Cantonese, they don't all believe that, and even then it's difficult to learn. I gotta give them that. So they're very excluded because they don't know any Cantonese for whatever reason. It's hard to learn, they're taking other classes, yada yada. Advanced STEMing students don't need to take Chinese at all. So quite a few non-locals are advanced STEMing, so they don't need to ever take Chinese class. It's not really their prerogative to learn. I just happen to love learning languages. And then also a political conservative, so I think when people go to America, they need to learn English and do their best to integrate to American culture while still maintaining their own. That's fine. But so the same thing I believe here. I'm an American, I move here. I need to learn Cantonese. I need to do my best to integrate to the culture. I can maintain this Western identity as well. And talking to my Western friends and doing what we do. But I think it's my duty as somebody who moved here to integrate. But again, not everyone holds this belief. Not everyone plans to stay after they graduate. So. The issue for them is they don't speak Chinese, and that's not required. So this is kind of but in social circles it's kind of hard to make these kind of rules. So I understand. I've talked to plenty of people about this, so I understand all the barriers to making these kind of changes, and most of them are just we can't regulate what the students do, and okay, yeah, that makes sense, but. And then also just take, like I said, a mild inconvenience outweighs the like the need for interacting with non-local students, and so I mean, yeah.
And do you have any advice or suggestion for the locals that encourage us to be more take the initiative and communicate?
So it's kind of counter to what I just said about like there's no reason for them to need to. I mean, we're pretty interesting, I can say, for the most part. Non-locals, you know, we can show you some interesting stuff you didn't know before, like how to drink 2 bottles of soju in one night. That's not all that Westerners or non-locals are about. But I mean, we have fun parties. We have integrated communities. With the exception of like KSA, Korean Students Association, because it's so large and the culture already is very exclusive. You know, the Taiwanese are very open to hanging out with locals because they're in a very similar situation. You know, they're like, well, mainland claims us, but we don't. And then here you guys are like, yeah, mainland claims us, and we're kind of not part of this. So like, very similar cultural situation in this regard, and additionally, looking similar. So a lot of my friends who are Taiwanese will often get mistaken for local, and so I have one of them who learned Cantonese really well, and everyone will think she's local until she tells them, unless she has like somewhat of an accent, but it's true too. But so you know, Taiwanese are also very open to interacting with locals. And then my group of friends, because I'm the only American that I see on a regular basis. You know, there's two others that I know of that hang around, but I don't ever see them. Or I see them in passing and say hi. But somebody in my sociology class recently defined that as hi, bye friends. You just run into each other and say, hey, how's it going? And just kind of keep walking. It's not that I don't like them, it's just I never see them for anything longer than that. You know? I usually walk into class or something like that. And then there's my British friend or whatever. So we have a very, very small, you know, community for people from our country. And those Central Asian communities are growing, like Kyrgyz and Kazakh. My friend group last year used to contain like 2 Kazakh, 2 Kyrgyz, you know, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. They're near Xinjiang. I don't know. Yeah, Xinjiang. So, you know, on the other side of the border is, I think Kyrgyzstan is there, and Kazakhstan is north of Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is pretty small, and Kazakhstan is like the 9th biggest country in the world or something. You can fact check me on that, but I have all these top 10 lists memorized. I don't know why. So, on that note, Hong Kong is actually the most prosperous economy in the not the prosperous, the freest market economy in the world, just edged out Singapore for the first time in 23 years last year. I always will commend Hong Kong for that every time I have the chance. Like, I'll do it in class, it's completely unrelated. Be like, by the way, economics, and but it's one of my other top 10 lists. So we have like a pretty diverse community. I have a few Indian students and people and Taiwanese as well. Because we call like ourselves like a mixed bag of people who are just kind of, what did we call ourselves last year as the outsiders group. But this year, you know, our group's kind of expanding. But it seems that, you know, with the expansion of the Kyrgyz and Kazakh populations, our Kyrgyz and Kazakh friends are hanging mostly around people from their own countries. And then my British friend being on exchange, and the only people I ever see now are like my Indian and Taiwanese friends. But I mean, so you can meet people from different countries if you would enjoy that, or you can improve on your English, but that's not a necessity by hanging out with us. But the best academic benefit to this would be diversity of opinion, because especially in my case, I'm a conservative, and for people my age in America, that's particularly rare. And I'm not a conservative on all measures, but generally people are pretty left-wing liberal in America. And CU professors also seem to be quite liberal in this regard, teaching liberal ideology as if it is fact, without stating that it's ideology and without providing evidence. It's been a huge issue that I've seen this year. And it's not, actually, surprisingly, it's not been exclusively in sociology. I thought it would be because, you know, sociology is kind of famous for being left-wing, but it's not been exclusively in sociology, but I have seen it mostly in the social sciences. So communications was one issue, and then I read a lecture slides from gender studies the other day. Actually, I found it in my sociology class, and I was like reading it, and I was like, any evidence of 133 slides of information, 7 sources. So either they're getting all of their information from a few sources, they're not citing their information, or they're not getting their information from anywhere other than themselves. So this is the kind of issue that I see with this. Is like, I'll be in my classes and I'll hear a student say something like, they'll say something that's a liberal ideology. I'll give an example of something somebody said was like, they said, we were talking about if human nature is to maximize individual utility, then how can humans work in groups? Like, why would they? How can they? And this is a sociology question. And one of them said, like, oh, the best way for that is communism, because then, you know, all our individual wants are put aside and we work toward the goal of the society and we all care about each other and it's great. And I was like, if you want to live in a communist country, then just go like 4 or 5 stops north on the MTR, there's one right there for you. And they're like, no, that's different. And that's just such an American cop-out way to say things. Like 3 years ago, they've since adapted, but they would say like, oh, that's not real communism. Real communism hasn't been tried yet. It's much better than it was in the USSR, North Korea, Vietnam, and China. There's all of these things, you know, like every available example, you know. So you know, I argued with him and I offered him a different opinion. I don't dislike this guy. I actually really enjoy that he's one of the few people in the class that will stand up and say anything controversial. Well, not anything controversial. Well, nobody says anything controversial, and so it's nice to hear, you know, somebody else like making statements that make waves. You know, I'm usually the only one, so it's nice to have this kind of exchange back and forth. And so this is a benefit you can get from non-local students. Is we've been raised in different cultures, so you know, for me, asking questions is the best way to learn things. Or you know, I was speaking with a different local. Actually, it was the same local in a different context. About like interacting with people, and he was talking about how it's difficult even for local students. You know, you get to university and making friends is kind of hard. You know, you need more time to make new friends, and he feels like every time he goes out, he's putting on a face, and then he goes back to his room and he can relax, and it's exhausting. And I was like, don't put on a face. You know, let people know who you are, because that's what I do. And I think it's kind of a more American thing, but not exclusively. I think Europe is generally the most straightforward, and then America, and then Asia. I don't know about like, other parts because I don't have experience with them. So, you know, I was like, just don't put on a face. Like, don't pretend to be nicer than you are. Don't act like you care about something you don't. Like, let people know what you think up front, and then let them decide if they like you or not. So this kind of, you know, general ideas is how, you know, locals can benefit from interacting with non-locals, and then non-locals could also benefit from interacting with locals. So diversity of opinion.
Okay. Any more questions?